Everybody needs a plan. Make one and stick to it. That way you will keep the keys to your home.
Rising political tensions suggesting that the government made the wrong decision to subsume the office of the political ombudsman into the Electoral Commission of Jamaica, or the fact that in at least one high-profile case, the offender has apologized, proof that the government was indeed right all along to make that divisive move. We discussed that and whether or not there's really need for a referee in this political situation as we get closer to the date for the next general election. I'll have the discussion with eminently qualified individuals. High-profile incidents on the campaign trail have given fresh oxygen to this argument about whether the right decision was made with the office of the political ombudsman, the decision by the government to put that office into the workings of the ECJ and allow the ECJ to work out a mechanism whereby the office of the political ombudsman can function, continues to divide opinion. We've seen Everald Warmington dropping F-bombs in Westmoreland. We've seen the PNP's Dr. Miranda Wellington talking about war in Westmoreland as well, and the public has had its fair share of comment about those comments among others, and some people are saying this is why we need a referee. Other people are saying, well, it's a system that is self-regulating, hence no need for a standalone office of the political ombudsman. So just in case you came in late and you don't know what the issue is about and why we are again talking about this office of the political ombudsman, we prepared this to bring you up to speed.
In the hills of Fine Grass, Manchester, a confrontation over political flags ended in gunfire. A Jamaica Labour Party JLP supporter was last weekend shot by police during a heated standoff with People's National Party PNP supporters. The incident, which unfolded before family members and neighbours, has reignited national concerns about political tribalism, the unchecked spread of partisan symbols, and the troubling absence of a political ombudsman to mediate such tensions. This incident is not isolated. Across Jamaica, from urban corridors to rural communities, political flags, the JLP's green and the PNP's orange, have once again become territorial markers. The resurgence of political paraphernalia has been met with growing public frustration as the nation awaits the general election. Presently, there is a matter between several political aspirants from the PNP in St. James and the St. James Municipal Corporation over placement of political posters in sections of Montego Bay. Despite an initial injunction allowing the aspirants a chance at replacing their posters, the matter is still under review by the court. However, the practice of marking turf with flags, long condemned as a relic of Jamaica's violent political past, has persisted in the absence of a strong regulatory hand. The once active office of the political ombudsman, which historically enforced the political code of conduct, has been vacant since November 2022. Though legislation passed earlier this year transferred its duties to the Electoral Commission of Jamaica, the ECJ, critics argue the move has diluted the office's independence and moral authority. So where do we go from here? And what will this mean once the general election is called? We discuss on Lead Story Prime this evening.
Thank you, Nika. So I have three guests this evening. Maxine Henry-Wilson is a former PNP Member of Parliament for South East St. Andrew, former General Secretary of the party as well. Ronald Thwaites, former Education Minister, former Member of Parliament for Central Kingston. And Bishop Dr. Alvin Bailey is President of the Jamaica Evangelical Alliance. We have two former parliamentarians and a clergyman to weigh in on this issue. Good evening, lady and gentlemen.
Good evening.
Good evening.
All right, I'm hearing Maxine Henry-Wilson very clearly. Reverend Thwaites, are you there?
I'm here.
Excellent. Hear you clearly. Bishop, Dr. Bailey, are you there?
He needs to unmute his mic.
Dr. Bailey, you need to. Right, I didn't hear him. I didn't pick him up earlier. Dr. Bailey, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Yes, I'm very
Excellent.
much here.
Excellent. Hearing you and seeing you. All right. Good evening again. Let me start, of course, with the lady in the group. Maxine Henry-Wilson, from where you sit, is there cause for concern about the direction or the heat in the political kitchen, so to speak, by virtue of what is being said on the campaign trail and the interaction between both sets of supporters from the two big parties? Or are we in the media inflaming things and making much ado about a situation that isn't worthy of the coverage that it is getting?
I wouldn't say that you are inflaming things. What I would say is that we have to be careful that we have the facts before every time we just jump up and say, this is what is wrong and this is what was not done. You're going to, in any political situation, as civilized as they may be in other jurisdictions, you do have some of those tensions. That's the nature of politics, the nature of power, right? You need internal regulation. The political parties themselves need to set benchmarks to say, this is what can be done, this cannot be done. And to police those. And then you need external persons, one of which is the ombudsman, but the ombudsman really had also consultation committees in the various parishes. So they also assisted with defining and also, trying to create some level of harmony among the parties, because it's a competitive situation. Everybody's trying to get an advantage. So that kind of structure provided some oversight. And I can tell you, as someone who benefited, I think, from the work of the ombudsman, at that time being Reverend Bishop Blair, it's not automatic, it's not a silver bullet, a wrong word to use, but there's no immediate, but it does have the scope for bringing communities together where they may have been almost divides that have taken place across boundaries. So it has played a role. I am concerned that the Electoral Commission of Jamaica it has a clearly defined role, several roles, and to take this on now, especially in the context of where the investigations, which is something that the ombudsman assisted with. I'm concerned that the Electoral Commission is being overtasked.
Interesting take there, especially that last bit about the ECJ being given too much work to do. We'll come back to that. Reverend Thwaites, your perspective on the issue of the rhetoric as things stand now, without an election date, without a nomination day, but close enough to those two very important announcements, and what you've seen and heard on the campaign trail so far, is a referee conspicuous by its absence?
Very conspicuous by its absence. It's disgraceful that there should have been any move to abolish the office. The Electoral Commission is totally inappropriate for doing the work that the Ombudsman did. My experience when I was in representation of politics is that people like Bishop Blair and Donna Parchment-Brown acted as reconcilers. They lowered the temperature when things got hot between different argument that it costs a lot of money, could be dealt with in another way, and is merely a ruse, because people obviously want the freedom to brook out. We've seen the signs of it, and we should reverse that bad law as quickly as possible.
All right. Bishop Bailey, your position on the absence of a standalone office of the political ombudsman, especially amid the political temperature, the rising political temperature, the sharp rhetoric from both sides of the political divide, and the pasting of flags and paraphernalia all over communities.
Dr. Errol Miller, former chairman of the ECJ, commented that this is the worst legislative move since independence. And I tend to agree. As a matter of fact, there must be a sense in which an important process like the elections and the electoral process should have a sense of supervision from an independent body, that there's a sense of accountability with respect to probity, integrity, and morality that is not attached to any other electoral process. You would have known that the electoral office deals with the matter of the technical aspect of it, and then the ethical and moral aspect of it is dealt with by the ombudsman. That should remain independent. And what seemed to be even more appalling about maintaining this decision is the fact that civil society, the church, and the wider Jamaican society is saying that this is a symbol of fairness that we want to maintain in such a critical time, in such a critical process, especially when, as you would mention, indications are clear that there's a propensity and tendency for persons to be beside themselves around this time. So I really do think that it is unfortunate that this is the situation.
Hear you on that. Let me take the break and come right back. I have the opening comments on the table and we can go further with this discussion. The absence of a referee, no standalone office of the political ombudsman. We all know it is now part of the ECJ. Certainly Maxine Henry Wilson believes that very important organization is being overburdened. It needn't be responsible for the functions of the ombudsman's office. And then the other two gentlemen decrying the decision and saying it was a bad legislative move and it ought to be reversed. More on this issue after these. This is Lead Story Prime.
Delve deep into the issues. We'll take you beneath the surface.
Greetings and salutations. My name is Orville Higgins and it's another edition of Fan Central.
Talking to the people at the heart of the top sporting stories. Hear from your favorite sportsmen and women and the administrators who work tirelessly to make it all happen. It's live sports talk.
I've written an entire article.
Yes.
Looking at all the major issues every Tuesday at 9 p.m. It's Fan Central.
Every dream conquered is another dream gained. I land and I fly again like a jet plane. Headed straight in your direction, 'cause I'm wiser, one step closer. I'm winning 'cause I work so hard. And the music keeps on playing, and the people them I say we are my show tonight. Oh, what a feeling! Don't stop dreaming. Keep on believing in the power of the feeling. Whatever you want, take a chance. Song in your heart, step in your dance. You got a spark, don't put it down. Shine your lights
Welcome back to Lead Story Prime here on CVM TV. My name is George Davis, talking about matters on the political campaign, the rhetoric, the temperature getting hot, some sharp words being exchanged across the political divide, and then the age-old problem once it comes to election time of people putting up flags and paraphernalia in communities and rival sides taking exception to what the other side is doing and what is resulting from that in terms of people feeling that we are reaching a tipping point and that with no referee in the game, things could get ugly rather quickly. I have with me former General Secretary of the People's National Party, Maxine Henry Wilson. She served Southeast St. Andrew in the Parliament for many years. Ronnie Thwaites also served in the Parliament, Central Kingston, and like Henry Wilson, he was a Minister of Education during his time as a legislator. And I have Bishop Dr. Alvin Bailey, head of the Jamaica Evangelical Alliance, the clergyman two clergymen on the panel. Maxine Henry Wilson's line is misbehaving. Oh, it's back, and I wanted to start with her in the second segment. Maxine Henry Wilson, I hear you on the solid footing that you started the conversation. But what about some people who will say, why do our leaders and former leaders continue to burnish the reputation of this office of the political ombudsman when in practice this office was nothing more than a glorified flag police, because an examination of their effectiveness will show that it is nowhere near what people would have you believe? How would you respond to that?
They are ill-informed. And one of my political colleagues used to say, young blood and no storm. A lot of people who make those claims don't realize where we are coming from in terms of our electoral system.
Yes.
We were actually on the brink in 1980, and a lot of investment was made by persons, civil society, in a force trying to create a set of institutions that would complement each other. It is not true that it is a paper tiger. I think I was just checking something. In 2000, it's either 1997 or 2002, the political ombudsman did some investigations into some outrageous campaigning that was taking place. And as a result of that, working with the police, of course, and aspects of the Electoral Advisory Committee, which it was at the time, they were able to stop campaigning in at least two constituencies.
One of those constituencies was Northwest St. James, in the community of Flanker especially.
And well, St. Thomas was one.
Yes.
And then you had a section of St. Catherine, and so it's more than one.
Yes.
Right. So we need to do our research before we make declarations. I'm not saying you because you would be following what, you're... That's one. There have been instances where working with the electoral system and the other authorities, they have been able to take definitive action to stop what could have become far uglier situations. And that is where the regulation comes in. That you try and have the discussions, build harmony, etc., but then you resort to much more punitive measures. People don't believe some of these things, until they have. Nobody believed that the constitutional authority would void elections until it happened.
Yes.
And then people said, wow, this is for real. So we should not just define powers in terms of what we see them as. There are prospects for them becoming far more stringent in terms of what it is that the authorities can do. And it's better for you to talk than to fight.
Yes.
Don't downplay the role of bringing adverse sides together.
Yes.
And having a conversation. Right? And that is an important role. Remember, too, the political ombudsman didn't only exist, or he did not only operate at election time. He was a part of the peace management initiative and worked very hard, although a lot has been scoffed at, in bringing peace to many communities.
Yes.
So its role really extended beyond just the period of elections.
Yes. All right, I take that, but I'll come back to that in a second. I just want to hear the other two men on the same point of the Ombudsman's office in practice being a glorified flag police rather than an organization, an entity, a backstop that really has influenced the behavior and conduct of our politicians on the campaign trail. Bishop Bailey, I come to you for your response to that.
Sure. And, to have an independent body of integrity, assessing your conduct at election is important. Just the matter of indicating whether or not your behavior is approved of is something that I think should be desirable for somebody on the campaign trail. So even without the requirement of wanting to be penal in its ultimate power. It's for me unfortunate that at that level of our leadership in our country, you want an institution to be able to carry out action to maybe criminalize you or so for your actions. I really do think that the importance of the office and its ability to declare that your conduct is appropriate and proper should be enough motivation for them to want to have it in place. And then, of greater significance for me is that the people are asking for it. Could you just show us a sense of accountability, sense of responsibility, an indication that you intend to behave yourself decently and cause us to put in place this independent person who can at least even flag you for a behavior that we think is, off, and in the midst of your excitement, you don't recognize that you do, but know that we say so, an independent person says you are prepared to adjust your conduct in keeping with civility and decency. I really do think that it should not be a matter of us assessing the office by its ability to be penal or to be drastic. But the mere fact that your conduct is assessed should be enough for you to approve it, that you can be seen as conducting in a way that is desirable.
Reverend Thwaites, your reaction to the flag police barb that is often thrown the way of the Ombudsman's office?
That's not my experience. During my time, I would get a call from Bishop Blair to say, look, I think I hear something is brewing here, or I want you to be careful about this or that. And I'm sure he did this to my opponent. That is very helpful. I adopt the spirit of what a bishop says. And I want to add, this office is all the more important in a situation where one party contesting the upcoming elections, their candidates and members have not signed the political code of conduct. Now, in this circumstance, it's a free-for-all, isn't it?
Yes.
And it is disgraceful that should be allowed to pass. It is an erosion of the caution that grows out of our history in these matters. The Ombudsman does much more than deal with posters and flags. That is a contempt on the office, and I'm sorry to say, a very, very wrong reflection on the office holders.
Yes. All right. Maxine and Wilson, I come back to you. You say that, it perhaps betrays inexperience on the part of some people. Johnny come lately is there, not your phraseology, but mine. If you say that the office is pure form over substance. But people will say to you that, look, since 2002, the Interim Act was promulgated, and that gave life to the Office of the Political Ombudsman. If you track the incidents that have been reported to the Political Ombudsman and the very public pushback from some of the people at the center of disputes concerning conduct, either what they said or what they did, them and their supporters, it does support the argument that this office has no power. And I'll give you an example. In the run-up to the 2011 election, after Bruce Golding resigned as JLP leader and stepped down as Prime Minister, and Andrew Holness found himself in the role of Prime Minister and leading the country to an election, the then PNP candidate for Northeast St. Catherine, Abe Dabdoob, said at a rally outside Linstead that, look, the driver has left the bus. The doctor said him no want the work, and now the loader man has stepped forward. That incensed labor rights, and a complaint was made to the political ombudsman at the time to say, look, how can this gentleman be calling the Prime Minister a loader man? Bishop Blair, the ombudsman at the time, wrote to Mrs. Simpson Miller in her capacity as opposition leader to prevail upon Abe Dabdoob to apologize. Not only did Dabdoob not apologize, he wrote a 3-page letter to Bishop Blair explaining why he had done nothing wrong, he would not be apologizing, and he was certain that the opposition leader would understand his position. That's just one example of several high-profile ones that I can go into in detail, where the desired the desired action from the politician at the eye of the storm was not successfully elicited by the ombudsman despite their considered entreaty. So I put that to you as one of the examples that people look at when they say, well, what is this office for then?
So probably you could find some other examples where it was effective, because I can give you many examples of it being effective. The ombudsman can't be blamed for an out of order political leader, and this is where also the political organizations come in. Listen, a lot of people don't know the history of these things, but you see, even the EAC, the pressure that I know PJ Patterson was under from internal people about how the EAC should operate, and the view that he was selling out his own comrades, right? And he stood firm, and he had civil society support. I'm saying the ombudsman alone cannot do it. He is one of many institutions, and he can point the way. Why Mr. Dabdoo was not censored, I do not know. But these are also the political parties themselves have a responsibility to have codes of conduct and to censor the people who are bringing the process into disrepute. And I am very, very sorry that we seem to see more of that now, where people feel they can go on a platform and say anything they like, using any language they like, and they're not censored. There are things that we were saying to people, you can't run.
Yes, yes. And Reverend Thwaites, just before the break, people point to the recent Westmoreland incident where the Southwest St. Catherine MP, Everald Warmington, dropped F-bomb after F-bomb. The opprobrium which attached itself to those comments saw him, a man who is notoriously anti-apologetic and very much his own way. He issued an apology without an ombudsman being present. So people say, well, the system self-regulates, Reverend Thwaites. Why then do we need a referee to cause someone or call on someone to do something? Well, look at who is apologizing with just a call from civil society and members of the public.
I'm not in a position to comment on what motivates Mr. Everald Warmington. I would only wish to say that he might have felt constrained by either his conscience or external pressure to regret his
I'm sorry, Reverend. I'm sorry, Reverend. You're saying, Reverend Thwaites.
This is comments against the opposition.
Reverend Thwaites, let me take the break and come right back and ask you to restate that, because I lost you at the critical point. Well, all of what you were saying I could barely hear, and I want my viewers to hear that. So let's take the break and come right back and see if we can refresh the connection and pose that question to you again. This is Lead Story Prime here on CVM TV.
What's up, racing fans? Tune into CVM to see all of the live action from Rally X.
An all-new Rally X highlights this Friday at 10 p.m.
Join us this week on Tourism One-on-One as we examine the growth of the Morgans Group, the local bedding manufacturer, and how they have benefited from various initiatives of the Tourism Enhancement Fund, including through the Tourism Linkages Network.
Everybody, I'm Yendi, and this is Odyssey with Yendi. In this space, we connect with some of your favorite people as they share their journeys. Here we have some unfiltered conversations as we deep dive into their inspirations, motivations, and experiences to inspire our own life journey.
Odyssey with Yendi, brought to you by Grace and Singer.
Start your journey with a Jane Bank Small Business Loan, with small business loans with as little as $10,000 and up to $4 million.
The time is 8:30.
Back with us on Lead Story Prime on this Tuesday evening, talking to Maxine Henry Wilson, Ronald Thwaites, and Dr. Alvin Bailey, talking about the issue concerning the Office of the Political Ombudsman, the role it ought to be playing, its historical role, which is why we handpicked our guests, people who know the history of the politics, who can inform their opinions, and talking about the political climate now and whether or not things that are happening or prove that self-regulation is to be allowed room to breathe, or whether these same things happening prove the need for this authoritative entity standing alone, this referee, to be able to regulate the behavior and conduct, lest it bleed over into the red zone. And of course, Jamaica does not want to return to the bad old days. So before the break, Reverend Thwaites, I'd put the question to you. I heard the initial part of your answer, but I'm still going to put the question the way I did to elicit the answer in the first place. And I was saying to you that the fact of Warmington's apology after his F-bomb tirade in Westmoreland, and that apology was not prompted by the political ombudsman in the ECJ. It was prompted by the calls from people around and people through the media, people on social media. A Warmington, a man who was notoriously strong-headed and, as we say in Jamaica, own way. He saw the need to apologize. Does that not prove, as some people are saying, that the system self-regulates itself? There is no need for a referee like a standalone ombudsman.
On the contrary, if there had been a strong political ombudsman, and I want to make it clear, not only do I think the office should be restored, but I think the powers of the ombudsman should be strengthened. But in an instance where you had an ombudsman fulfilling that kind of role with such powers, Mr. Warmington would not only have apologized for his expletives, but also for his rank racism in respect of Mark Golding. Has he apologized for that? An ombudsman would have seen to it that that would have been required of him.
All right.
Yes. I want to endorse what Ronnie said.
Which part? Which part, Maxine? Which part you want to endorse?
I'm not following your logic that because Mr. Warmington apologized, there's no need for an ombudsman. It could apply to any institution because the man steals from the bank and he has to provide restitution. There's no need for a court to deal with it. It doesn't follow.
Yeah.
He has not apologized for many other things. So I don't know what motivates them to apologize.
Yes.
And I'm not even trying to find out.
Yes.
But every institution has to, if you believe in it, it's going to have flaws. When the EAC started, I can tell you as a member, it was outrageous at times, the kind of behavior. But as you went along, you strengthened the institution. If you believe in an institution, you do not deinstitutionalize it, you strengthen it. And I think that's where we should have gone. If we believe that there is need. Remember now, political parties are now being asked to register, and you're looking at their constitutions, etc. So what you're doing is giving them formal legal powers. And together with that must be somebody who regulates them beyond just election day.
Yes. just to remind you, I take those points, but just to remind you that the view about Warmington's apology proving the need for, proving that there's no need for a referee is not my view. I'll make you clear when the view is mine. But as in my capacity, I have to be able to present to you dominant views that are out there, people are cottoning onto, and put it to someone like yourself to address it so that you could inform people where it is they are going wrong in their interpretation of the need for this ombudsman. But that's fine.
I appreciate that.
Fine.
I appreciate that.
So here's Dr. Bailey. Hear me now, Dr. Bailey. Let's go to 2007. And when we could say then that the Office of the Political Ombudsman, 5 years after this interim act, gave life to it, and Bishop Blair was in his Aki, as people would say here in Jamaica, and he was part of the PMI, as Maxine Henry Wilson has reminded us, and a man of tremendous respect. 2007 elections saw several unsavory statements made, and I'm going to 2007 because it was referenced that an active standalone ombudsman, the presence alone would cause decency to attend to comments from the political platform. And of course, where decency escaped some people, then there will be a price to pay. I'll point you to a couple of incidents. In Southeast St. Anne, the JLP's Peter Fakuri, of a young Lisa Hanna then, called her a punk and a dopey on the political platform. Then former PNP General Secretary Donald Buchanan referred to Chris Tufton as Satan. Roger Clark said of JLP supporters, he called them, he said some of them behave like rapists and another word that I can't unfortunately say on air. This was 2007, and this was the rhetoric coming from the political platform on the hustings week in, week out as the parties jostled for supremacy. So I say to you, the Ombudsman was active then. These statements were made and nobody paid with any pound of flesh for what they said, giving oxygen again to the fire that people lit when they said, wait, what is the office for if these people can say these things and get away with it?
Yes. Well, my response to that is, in the face of these many cases that are unacceptable both to the politicians and the public, what should be looking into is to strengthening the office of the Ombudsman and not paralyzing it. Because fundamentally for me are the principles that must be in place in the office of the Ombudsman. And one, an institution that is not compromised by another, or in fact compromising another, individual of integrity that has the confidence of the public and the politician themselves, policies to govern the way he governs in that office, and that everybody signs on to agree to, and the relevant actions that must be taken if they don't. And of course, people responding, as we hear, persons, when actions are taken, respond to the Ombudsman and vice versa. But in the absence of the power to execute the right kinds of actions, then the office will continue to be abused. So my position is, rather than eliminate it and subject it to compromise, strengthen the office, especially when we realize that things are not necessarily getting better, it's getting worse. And
but Dr. Bailey, if I may, what do you say to the position of the Justice Minister Delroy Chuck, who has said on this program and elsewhere that by virtue of the decision to put the Ombudsman's office into an organization such as the ECJ, which is, if not universally, certainly regionally respected for what it has managed to do to the competitive political landscape in Jamaica, that by doing that, by giving it the cocoon of the ECJ's reputation, availing it of the ECJ's resources, that it is in effect strengthening how the Ombudsman's office can play its hand at election time? What say you to that?
First of all, the antecedent of some of these decisions breeds suspicion. I mean, why can't the decisions of the public take precedence over a political party, any one of them for that matter, who would want to make a decision that is unpopular? The fact of the matter is that there is even no independent office in itself, which is, in my estimation, is unacceptable. It's no individual. There's a registrar of political parties, a new person that is put in place. And he, along with the members of the ECJ, is what makes the decision, not an independent officer that makes the decision. My position is that some of these institutions that are responsible to hold individuals accountable, especially competing individuals, must be governed and the decisions taken by others other than the people themselves who is affected by their decision. So, you know, the Justice Minister I know is a politician, and I would expect the same kind of bias. Wouldn't be surprised, rather, if there's the kind of bias from the other party. And as far as I'm concerned, you know, I would say that anything that stands in the way of and prevent an office from carrying out its function independent of any consideration from other competing institution or party involved should be avoided.
Yeah. Maxine Henry Wilson, at the top of the show, in your opening statement, you mentioned that you believe that the words to the effect that the ECJ is overburdened by taking on the responsibilities of the Ombudsman's office. But if you look at the Ombudsman's office on paper, the organizational structure, so clearly it has the political ombudsman. I'm talking how it existed in its former guise before this adjustment. So you had the ombudsman herself, Mrs. Parchment Brown. She had an administrative assistant. She had an executive secretary. She had an office attendant. There was a bearer and a driver. There was no investigator. There was no legal counsel, despite there being two places in the ombudsman's establishment for those two posts. So when you look at those people, and she noted in one of her annual reports to the Parliament that she had to depend on youth service volunteers, district constables and so forth to fill out some of the roles that were expected to be performed by the office. So I bring that up to say the establishment isn't large. It's a very small bureaucracy by state agency standards, and it was in effect a state agency. So to take that and put it into the ECJ, give me some more of what you mean by the ECJ being overburdened by taking on a bureaucracy of that size expected to perform the duties that attends to the Ombudsman's office.
I'm not here speaking about bureaucratic structures. I'm talking about mandates. And the mandate of the ECJ, in my view, is to ensure that there are free and fair elections. Now, some of what that we are now putting in there, I think, gives them. It's almost as if you are giving them some of what Dr. Bailey said. Don't put them in a position where they have to make those kinds of calls about flag and this and conduct and so forth. They already have a mandate. And that mandate has to do with the function of the electoral system, right? And all the other constituent parts. And so they have been working on things like financing of elections, declarations of elections, and some of what the ombudsman, a lot of what he's doing is more behavioral, right? I don't think the ECJ should be taking on regulating that kind of behavior. Look at the electoral system, and there are much more reforms to be done in the electoral system, and the ECJ members themselves will agree to that. So, what are they going to do? They are going to get investigators, and they're going to get persons to look at people's behaviors and how many flags are. I don't think that's their mandate. My question is not whether they have 40 people or one. My issue really is what is the mandate of the ECJ and what is the mandate of a political ombudsman, and are you going to merge them? And if you do, does it strengthen the ECJ? Or does it compromise some of its functions? And I think it would be more the latter.
Yeah, as I go to this break, ladies and gentlemen, I remember a lady calling me recently at my place of employ to say to me, yes, Master Judge, with the change that the government has made to the Ombudsman's office, when there is a little problem and a person like me would call Miss Donna or call Bishop Blair, who am I going to call? And I couldn't answer. Honestly. And maybe that's a part of the problem that we're having with the change. More on Lead Story Prime after these, my final segment with these three guests.
deep into the issues. We'll take you beneath the surface.
Greetings and salutations. My name is Orville Higgins, and it's another edition of Fan Central.
Talking to the people at the heart of the top sporting stories. Hear from your favorite sportsmen and women and the administrators who work tirelessly to make it all happen. It's live sports talk.
I've written an entire article.
Yeah.
Looking at all the major issues every Tuesday at 9 p.m. It's Fan Central.
Come rise with Tamaiti. Your Wednesday just got a little crazier. First up, we'll dip into some blessing in Wednesday service. Then we set sail with the Logos Hope in Sunrise Book Club. We'll drop in for a little decor inspo with design diva Karen Booker. And your Wednesday fun wraps with Wags. Why Not Wednesday is brought to you by Flow. You've never seen a sunrise quite like this.
Protecting Jamaica's borders is a key priority for the Jamaica Customs Agency. The JCA will remain vigilant and resolute in effectively fulfilling this mandate. The time brought to you by the Jamaica Customs Agency is
8:45.
Welcome back to Lead Story Prime here on CVM TV, speaking with Dr. Alvin Bailey, President Jamaica Evangelical Alliance, former Kingston Central MP and Education Minister, the Reverend Ronald Thwaites, and former Education Minister, PNP General Secretary and a Member of Parliament for South East St. Andrew, the lady Maxine Henry Wilson. You know, they teach you not to, in an interview, to give your opinion, but I believe that we're having a conversation among the four of us, so I'm tentatively just going to offer an opinion here for the sake of the discussion, and it's this. I've said publicly that I believe that the decision to subsume the Ombudsman's office into the ECJ was wrong. I really think that it ought not to be. At the same time, I've said that I also strongly believe that the way the Ombudsman's office was outfitted, the powers available to both Bishop Blair, and I wept with that man at the time when he struggled to impose order. More so Mrs. Parchment Brown, as her entreaties fell on deaf ears. I really felt that they needed more teeth, they needed the support, and if our legislators were to do anything to the Ombudsman's office, it would be to give it more power. So I turn to the three of you now. Reverend Thwaites, I'll start with you. You know the system well. If we are to revert to standalone, what will you now outfit this standalone office with to help it achieve its stated objectives?
Just for context, look where we are now. We have one entire political party whose members have not signed the political code of conduct. We have gutted the ombudsman's role, albeit weak and less effective than it could have been. And we have placed it, or we say we've placed it in an institution where it's not its mandate, and which itself would have political representatives engaged in judging their own company. I am surprised that the Electoral Commission, under such esteemed leadership as Earl Jarrett, didn't say to the government, look, this is not our task at all. Don't try and pass it on to us. What should we do? We should reinstate the role, and we should give two things. One, investigative powers and personnel to the Ombudsman, and also make it mandated so that in instances of egregious conduct, she can refer the matter, the cause, the incident, to the Director of Public Prosecutions for action.
Very well. Just to note, though, also, Reverend Thwaites, that your call for an investigator to be given, as I mentioned, that is a part of the structure, but it was never, the personnel was never there. So Blair and Parchment Brown are functioning without the assistance of someone in that capacity. All right, so I take that point. Differently. Yes, there you go. All right. Bishop Bailey, your perspective on how we can assist this standalone Ombudsman's office that you believe is necessary to function even more effectively than it was before?
I jokingly say elsewhere that if it really was imperative that it be placed with a particular institution or organization, why didn't they put it in the Integrity Commission? But especially when we think that the burden of the decision they take and the actions that they carry out is alongside more than ethical practices. Then I wonder, in fact, that I'm agreeing that it needs to be given the kind of legislative support or legal support and investigative support to be able to take stronger actions if it's going to be a standalone office. And indeed, the selection of the person is one that civil society and the church approves of greatly because of the nature of the decision they have to be taken. I think the political parties understand very well what ought to be and is the office of the ombudsman, and they are prepared and can in fact comply if they make a concerted effort to do so. I'm convinced that the technical comprisation of the office is, in my estimation, something that can be circumvented by any of them if they choose to do so. So I really do think that the will to comply with a kind of conduct and be prepared to make them be available for scrutiny and for criticism, is very important. And so I really do think that yes, investigative powers and some amount of punitive action powers is necessary.
Maxine and Wilson, if you agree with me that the office standing alone as it was before is not fit for purpose, is not suiting anybody well, and that, a standalone office does indeed need more powers, what change do you think is necessary to make it strong by itself?
Well, first of all, it really should not just be a phenomenon of an election or an electoral period. It really should also be regulating the conduct and behavior of political persons and the hustings. That's general, right?
Yes.
I believe that there is a set of institutions that you call parish consultative committees. I believe those should be at the political ombudsman should be able to call, whether it is the president of these parish committees or whatever. You have CAFE, right? What I'm saying is that we always think of a big bureaucracy, but we already have organizations out there who are concerned with, committed to a society that has propriety in terms of its political behaviors and mores, and already know the landscape. Why don't we set up a kind of consultative body that provides the support that the ombudsman will need? I wouldn't say that I've thought it through, definitively, but I think that there is a way in which we can build the architecture that it doesn't have to be a big bureaucracy, but that it takes on other roles in terms of regulating political behavior.
Thank you for that. Reverend Thwaites, for the time being, and it does appear as if we're going to have to go to the next election with the status quo, with the ombudsman in the place that it is. What would you suggest to the Secretariat of both major political parties and others in terms of how they have a self-regulating mechanism to deal with the worst kind of comments on the political platform from those who posture to represent them?
That's going to be very difficult. I think both parties have a when they're ready, have a sense of what is appropriate in these circumstances. The Prime Minister said something which many will feel goes that way. I don't think it's nearly strong enough. But the moment calls for the strength of civil society, of the voluntary organizations, the churches, in the particular instances, to call out and to encourage clients. I used to be called upon by the members of the church leadership, and counseled as to the principles that one ought to espouse as a political representative. That was influential. Others can do it, and we are going to have to take charge of the situation in circumstances where at least one political party is obviously trying to erode and to dismantle every check and balance to appropriate conduct.
Dr. Bailey, your work is cut out because people will be looking at you and the church, people like yourself, to say, boy, stand as the referee because there's none on the pitch.
No, as a matter of fact, I want to say that the people of Jamaica is demanding much more than we are seeing. The church is speaking directly, and the politicians will tell you that. We are speaking, and we are prepared to speak even more. As we speak, meetings are happening, this program is being watched, and we are formulating a means of speaking to them and to this nation with respect to expectation, especially during the election. So let me just say that, yes, we know, and you'll be hearing from the church on matters. We don't want to seem to be partisan in some of the comments we make. So we listen and investigate as clearly as we can before we speak. But we are watching, and we are prepared to speak unbiasedly about actions that we think are unacceptable. We have heard some, and I think they know exactly what is our position on some of them because they have received our calls on both sides with respect to some of the unacceptable language and utterances.
Yes, thank you very much.
We are watching, and we are prepared to speak further on the matter to the individual cases of unacceptable behavior.
Thank you very much. I've begged a few more seconds, Maxine Henry Wilson, Ronald Thwaites, to ask both of you, Maxine Henry Wilson first. Does it please you, though, given your experience, your long brief watching and participating in politics, that political violence is something that seems to be on the periphery of the political happenings day to day, rather than front and center as it has been in political campaigns past?
You mean that we have less political?
Yes, miss. Yes, indeed.
Motivated.
Yes.
Of course, it must. I mean, one of the reasons why I decided that I had had enough of representational politics, because that's not the only politics, was that the constituency that I was in was just a surfeit of violence, not necessarily direct political violence, but it had political moorings, and development is directly contradictory to that kind of behavior. Because communities are divided, families are constantly under threat. So it really is heartwarming to see that kind of violence has kind of, become less obvious. But
Yeah. Reverend Thwaites, your quick comment on that, the political violence now versus in the past.
God, there's less political violence. I'm ashamed that there's more tribalism. Tribalism is at the heart of Jamaica's malady. No one political tendency can satisfy the needs put us on a fruitful position to go forward in this land. And inherent in all this big talk and behavior that we're talking about, the ombudsman correcting, is the cancer of tribalism. Let us recognize that and deal with it.
Mas Alvin, Sir Ronnie, Lady Maxine, thank you very much for your company this evening. Really appreciate it. All the best.
Thank you.
All right. That was Lead Story Prime here on CVM TV. Fan Central comes up next.
Let's delve deep into the issues. We'll take you beneath the surface.
Greetings and salutations. My name is Orville Higgins, and it's another edition of Fan Central.
Talking to the people at the heart of the top sporting stories. Hear from your favorite sportsmen and women and the administrators who work tirelessly to make it all happen. It's live sports talk.
I've written an entire article.
Yes.
Looking at all the major issues every Tuesday at 9 p.m. It's Fan Central.
This week on Tourism One-on-One, as we examine the growth of the Morgans Group, the local bedding manufacturer, and how they have benefited from various initiatives of the Tourism Enhancement Fund, including through the Tourism Linkages Network.
Welcome, Rise with Tamaiti. Your Wednesday just got a little crazier. First up, we'll dip into some blessing in Wednesday service. Then we set sail with the Logos Hope in Sunrise Book Club. We'll drop in for a little decor inspo with design diva Karen Booker. And your Wednesday fun wraps with Wags. Why Not Wednesday is brought to you by Flow. You've never seen a sunrise quite like this.